For the first episode in our 1889 deep dive series, I figured who better than the tragic actor turned killer, Basil Karlo. Without further ado, let's see the real history behind Clayface and Gotham 1889. In this continuity, Clayface is based on a number of actual historical figures and subjects. To kick it off, let's look at the historical figures. The historical figures that inspired this version of Clayface were Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone. These two figures were also the inspiration that drove Bill Finger to pick the name Basil Karlo for Clayface's alias. It's a combination of Rathbone's first name and Karloff's last name. For our intents and purposes in Gotham 1889, we drew inspiration from these actors as well. To kick it off, let's look at Boris Karloff. Born William Henry Pratt, Karloff was famous as a horror icon in films from 1919 to 1968. He was the first actor to take on the role of Frankenstein's monster in numerous films. It is widely speculated how exactly Boris Karloff devised his stage name, with there being various unconfirmed theories. This lack of surety fit perfectly into our adaptation of Clayface, as being an inspiration for Karloff. Clayface's story takes place well before Karloff's career begins. Karloff's status as a horror icon also lends to the 1889 Clayface. Basil Karlo was also considered a horror icon in our iteration. The other actor who inspired our version of Clayface was born Philip St. John Basil Rathbone. He shortened his name, as his stage name, to Basil Rathbone. Rathbone was involved in various films, short films, and plays leading up to 1939. It was then that he took on the role of Sherlock Holmes in a number of film serials. Even after trying to shake off the role of Holmes, the studio would often typecast him, keeping him from escaping the role truly. Rathbone's seeming annoyance with the studio inspired our version of Clayface's annoyance and disgruntlement with the theater that discarded him. A fictional character who inspired the 1889 Clayface is Falseface from the Batman 1966 show. This is another incarnation of Clayface, as Falseface shares the secret identity of Basil Karlo with Clayface. The reason that this version of Basil Karlo was an inspiration was because of the focus on his being a master of face disguise. In order to keep Gotham 1889 realistic and grounded, we had to shy away from making him a shape-shifting monster. Falseface was known to wear suits, hats, and other clothes, while merely disguising his face to avoid detection. Our version of Clayface, while disfigured and easily picked out in a crowd, also sticks to wearing period-accurate normal clothing. Apart from characters, fictional and non-fictional, another inspiration for the 1889 Clayface was The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. First released as a magazine serial from 1908 to 1910, it was released as a volume later in 1910. The story follows the Phantom, a disfigured man named Eric, as he wreaks havoc in an opera house in Paris. The employees and residents of the opera house are terrified of him. The reason for his vengeance is his fixation on a girl named Christine, and his jealousy of another man vying for her affection, Raoul. In Gotham 1889, our version of Clayface takes cues from the Phantom. He hides in the theater where he formerly worked. He attacks cast and crew alike. He tries to ruin the production that he was formerly supposed to star in. Since 1889 Clayface's story takes place before the publication of The Phantom of the Opera, we spun it so that news of Basil Karlo's horrendous actions actually made their way across the pond, inspiring Gaston Leroux in his writing. In the Gotham 1889 universe, The Phantom of the Opera is based on true events. An affliction that Gotham 1889's Clayface has is known as Ehlers-danlos Syndrome. This real-life medical condition results in an individual being born with loose joints, joint pain, abnormal scar formation, and extremely stretchy skin. An individual born with this can have some health complications of varying sorts, but would seem normal on the outside, for the most part. 1889 Basil Karlo, having been born with this condition, was doubly affected once he became disfigured. He has extremely stretchy, almost elastic skin, and a terrifyingly scarred visage, not made better by abnormal scarring that can already be caused by Ehlers-danlos. Again, while not being a shapeshifter, we wanted to find a real-life example of how Basil Karlo, Clayface, could still maintain that characteristic of malleability. The cause of Clayface's disfigurement in Gotham 1889 is Sionis Cosmetics. This was in further part due to the white phosphorus in these products producing a condition called Fosse Jaw. This condition occurred widely in the matchstick industry during the 19th century. Factory workers began to experience a breakdown in the bones of their jaw due to white phosphorus vapor in the air. Victims of this condition would often have to have the afflicted jawbones removed surgically, or else organ failure would follow. This would mean that Basil Karlo would have had to have certain bones in his jaw removed as well. That fact lends to the disfigurement that he experienced, and why his countenance would appear terrifying, even clay-like to some. And that wraps up our summary of the real history that inspired Clayface and Gotham 1889. If you liked this episode, drop a like and let me know in the comments what other character deep dives you'd like to see. I also want to give a very special thank you to our Patreon patrons, channel members, and GoFundMe supporters for making this video, and all our other ones possible. If you want to help support the channel, you can find those links in the description or click the join button below. As always, thanks for watching, and remember, the night is darkest just before the dawn, and I promise you, the dawn is coming. Have a great day, and see you in the next video.